Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again today on Safe Money Radio. And I always say this in today's world. You might be listening on the radio right now as you drive. You might be online on YouTube watching this, watching the podcast. We do have both. We have Safe Money Radio. It's the longest running financial planning show in the Ozarks. This is the start of year 16, which is unbelievable to me. But we also have a podcast now. We have thousands of subscribers, people that watch all over the country. In fact, just yesterday, we got our notice that we are about to crush the 300,000 viewer mark on one of our videos. So it went viral. Lots of people commenting about what's the topic? IRMA, income-related monthly adjustment amounts, the surtax on your Medicare. So we cover all kinds of things on the show. And one of the things that we try to do very often so that you're not always just listening to me is we have incredible guests on the show. So today, if you're listening on the radio, you want to go to YouTube and watch the podcast because we have a great guest with us, a first-time guest. So attorney Will Worsham, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
It's good to have you here. And I'll always say this, when it's a first-time guest, even though you're known locally all over the area, you do a lot of great things in our community. For our listeners, I want you to just tell us a little bit about yourself as we get started. Your background, how do you end up getting in this crazy business? And let's hear a little bit about Will.
Yeah, well, my favorite thing to tell people about myself is I am a hillbilly, born and bred. I am from the Ozarks. I live on a century farm. We run cattle, and that's where I come from. So I love the fact I'm being a hillbilly. I know sometimes I've typed that into Chat GPT, and it says that that violates our terms of use because they think it's a pejorative term. And I don't think that at all. I think if I call somebody a hillbilly, that's a compliment. But so I grew up right here in the Ozarks. I went to Rogersville High School. I went to Drury University, and then went to University of Missouri in Columbia for law school. And I think one of the reasons I decided to get into the law business is my dad was a policeman his whole career, and he ended up being sheriff. So I always was around the legal community. And so the first 20 years of my career, I was in criminal justice. I was an assistant prosecutor, and then when I left that practice, I opened my own criminal defense law firm. And something kind of unique happened then. In order to kind of build a practice, because I was a new lawyer, nobody knew me. I built a website. We had this thing back in the 1900s, way back then, called the internet. And I had learned as a prosecutor that there was a certain group of people that knew that if you got a traffic ticket, you could go to the court, talk to the prosecutor, maybe keep it off your record. And as we all know, those traffic tickets really zing our insurance rates. So I built this website called MissouriTrafficTickets.com and used Google AdWords, and we only charged $75 to help people keep that off their record. What we have found out later, that was the world's first completely online legal service provider. We built it right here in the Ozarks. And what I loved about that practice was we were able to take something that a lot of people didn't have access to or didn't know about and make it accessible and affordable to a broader section of the population. But running that criminal defense firm and handling 200 traffic tickets a month all over the state was a bit much. And I was encouraged by a friend to maybe think about doing something different. And so I went through a coaching program and concluded that I needed a personal mission statement. So my personal mission statement is to glorify my God, protect my family, support my community, and make communists uncomfortable. That's kind of where I kind of try to land. And that meant needed to look for something different to do because I couldn't spend all that time in court. So as I looked at the legal landscape and looked at some incidents in my own family, I really felt like estate planning wasn't being provided well to people. It wasn't accessible, it wasn't affordable, and a lot of times it wasn't being done correctly, and people thought they had their things in order, and it turned out they didn't. So I retired from my criminal practice. I kept my judgeships. I still serve as a municipal judge in a couple little towns like Rogersville and Stratford, but went whole force into estate planning and really looked at the way it was done, soup to nuts, and came up with just a really, I think, different, unique, and successful way of serving people in estate planning.
So I heard two things. So I want to go back to two things. The first thing I heard was at $75 per person, helping them with their tickets and getting that off the record, you became everyone's best friend very quickly.
Yeah, except other lawyers. They all thought I was crazy because they were charging $500 and they kept telling me you can't make a living spending an hour or two in court for a $75 traffic ticket. But I didn't do that. I didn't go on one. I'd go on 10, I'd go on 20. So there's a little volume to that. Yeah. No, I was everybody's best
Fantastic.
friend for sure. Yeah. We saved
Yep,
people
except the
thousands of
competition,
dollars.
and I get that. So,
Yeah.
and then the second thing, that mission statement, if you will, we have listeners all over the world, but it's ironic. All the people from all across the country, seems like all the people who call me, who want our help, all kind of fall into the same boat. So, if you will, repeat your mission statement again. I think it's
Sure.
important.
My personal mission statement is to glorify my God, protect my family, support my community, and make communists uncomfortable.
I love it. Those of you who've been watching me for the last 15 years and listening, you know, even though Will and I are kind of new acquaintances, getting to know each other better and better, you can already tell we share a lot of things in common. So if you're watching or listening today for the first time, we're going to give you a number a few times today. We just want you to have the number so that you can call us 866-780-SAFE. That's 866-780-7233. And during the show, obviously, Safe Money Radio. My book is The Safe and Secure Retirement Income Plan. We talk a lot about safety, personal safety, financial safety, safety for your family, for your estate, for your future heirs. And Will is an expert in this, and that's why we have experts on the show. We're going to be talking about this throughout the rest of the show today. You can call in and ask for a free financial consultation at any time. I'll give you a copy of my books and my material absolutely free. We're going to be talking about Will's book that he has written, and we'll also give you some information maybe about a new book that's coming out and how to get in contact with him. His information will be on the screen. So 866-780-7233. There's always someone standing by to take your call. Friends, if you're just now joining us on the show today, we have guest attorney Will Worsham. And I'll tell you, you guys know I had a brain tumor back when I was 27 years old. And so 25 years almost now, recovered from that. I had seizures when my tumor was first discovered. That's how we discovered it. And when I say the word attorney, I almost have it again. Have a seizure. So, and Will knows I'm going to poke a little bit of fun, but it's the truth. Like on my list of all the people and guests I've had on the show, there haven't been any attorneys on the show. And why is that? Well, they're not my favorite group of people. They're right up there with dentists and doctors, and they may even be number one on the I'm not going to go see them unless I absolutely have to go see them list. And I hope I don't have to. But this is what I've learned in 16 years of my practice now, and in working with so many clients, many times who don't have a will, they don't have a trust, they don't have any power of attorney, they don't have a TOD on any of their stuff. And we find out just how problematic that is, and we deal with it. They'll come to us and ask for help, and we didn't set up their estate planning. And then, of course, we find out that they're in a mess because often the call will come in because someone's lost a loved one, and they find us and they want our help. So today we're going to be talking about why it's critically important to work with not just any attorney, but someone who's worth their salt, who really knows what they're doing. And so, Will, if you will, talk to us a little bit about why it's important as part of a safe and secure retirement income plan to have a really good attorney and plan in place for your estate.
Well, first of all, let me tell you, I agree. Lawyers are the worst. I'm not a fan of dealing with lawyers either. In fact, when I started my practice, we used to have the yellow pages, and so every attorney had to advertise in yellow pages. And I ran an ad, and the text of the ad was "Hate lawyers, so do we." And that was that was our yellow page ad. And then we had some other
Good.
text on there about we also hate bad accountants, bad everybody else, and that's why we're here. But I think that goes to your point. Sometimes lawyers, I think there's a lot of problems that people encounter when they want to talk to lawyers. First of all, I think lawyers, as a rule, sometimes are terrible listeners. They don't listen to what people have to say. They don't really take the interest that they need to in their client's specific situation. And that's critically important because you can miss key details, particularly in an estate planning practice, if you're not paying attention as an attorney. So first of all, you have to have an attorney that really will be interested and really want to hear what your really concerns are, because not everybody's the same. There's, I think, a temptation across practices for kind of a one size fits all cookie cutter type approach, particularly in estate planning. We've already got these forms drafted. If we can somehow shoehorn these people into that plan, then we can still get paid and we can still serve the client. But we've been able to draft using some modern technology. We talk a lot. You'll find I really like my technology. that we've been able to create a really streamlined process for being able to really drill down and really customize documents for folks. But I've told people all the time when they ask me, how do I choose a lawyer? I said, you need to sit down with them. You need to sit down face to face and just see if there's really chemistry. Is this somebody that you like? Is this somebody you feel like you can trust? And you really should never work with any professional that you probably wouldn't be happy to sit down and have a cup of coffee or lunch with. You need to like them. And I think that's
Yes.
really important, particularly in estate planning. That personal relationship is key.
Yeah. And I think you hit the nail on the head with something. There's all kinds of jokes. There are about pastors, there are about financial planners, there are about attorneys, and this could fit for a lot of them. But it seems like the joke, about a lot of attorneys, especially if they're an estate planner, is you walk in and say, "Hi, my name's Brad. You need a trust." I mean, you can't get anything
Yeah.
out of your mouth before they already know what they're going to tell you. So, like you said, just like people will joke, "Oh, he's going to sell you an annuity. Oh, you need stocks, bonds, mutual funds." It's the way it is. But we are very, very different in the way we approach things. I think we shock people a lot of the times, and I know you're the same way as I learn more about you, having attended one of your estate planning sessions for the public. And here's the thing. People will come in and meet with us, and we'll get to the end of the first meeting, and they'll say, well, how much do we owe you today? And I'll smile and say, well, this is where I'm different than anyone else, and I'll explain why they're not going to pay me. Well, how much is it
Mm.
going to be next time? Well, you're not going to pay me the next time either. Well, but do we need to give you all of our forms and sign things over? No, we're not going to do anything today. And that lets them take a deep breath. It lets them calm down and go, wait, we're not doing anything today. They realize my time is worth something. It's very valuable. We can't get any more time. There's 24 hours in one day, and you cannot make more of it no matter who you are or how much money you make. So time is important. But here's the thing. We let them know that we cannot know you after 1 hour. Even if you've done something online with us, if you've listened to me on the radio for 15 years, I don't know you yet. So I have to sit down with you and find out who you are, what your plan is, what your purpose is. And that's going to tell me more about what I need to look into in order to help develop the right plan for you. And I know that you're the same way, correct?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, at some point we do charge a fee for what we do, but our process is built in with multiple meetings, as you know, where you've usually spent, we've usually spent, including our workshop time, usually up to almost 3 hours with our folks. Somebody in my practice, me personally, getting to know them, and we know exactly what we find out what their ideas, goals, dreams, and desires are before we ever sit down and create a finalized plan. And it's only after all that that we can look at somebody and say, okay, here's how much it would cost for us to do what you want to do. And usually our clients are shocked at our rates. They're very reasonable. I didn't base anything I did based on what other estate planning lawyers did. We built the whole practice from the ground up, so we're very different in the way we structure everything, particularly our fee schedule.
Well, and that's why you're very different, and that's why you stay extremely busy. So that's what I want to talk about next. I want to get back together and start talking about some of the things you do in the local community. But if you're listening right now and you want more information, you want to contact Will, find out more about what you need to do for an estate plan, we're going to have his information on the screen. If you want some help regarding financial planning and how that ties into the estate plan and working together with a financial professional and an attorney, just call us anytime. Our number is 866-780-SAFE. That's 866-780-7233. And there's always someone standing by to take your call. Friends, if you're just joining us today, we have the author of this book, The Lawyer Without a Suit, Will Worsham. And you notice he's not wearing a suit today. I love it. I mean, very rarely ever, if I have to, I will wear one, but I got rid of that many, many, many years ago. A lot of people know that I was in full-time ministry for 17 years. Near the end of that, we kind of started getting away from the tie, and I was so grateful to not be choked all morning long. And so now my theory is I'm not ever putting one back on again unless I have to. So we're glad to have him here, have him on the show. And I just want to say this. Will is really well known all throughout the area as a public figure. He's done all kinds of things. If you missed the first part of the show, go to YouTube and rewind and watch the beginning because he talks about his background. But I know, Will, you've done a lot of estate planning sessions and meetings in Ozark, in Springfield, in Rogersville. Tell us a little bit about what you do in the community.
Sure. One of the things that we identified when we started looking at estate planning as a practice, an area of law that needed some rehab, I should say, is we felt like people weren't getting good information. They didn't have the information they needed to make a good estate plan. Sometimes they were just afraid to come and actually make an estate plan because it's such an unknown thing. So right off the bat, what we started doing is we put together a workshop. It runs between an hour, 15, hour and a half. I like to tell people it's an hour, but it never lasts just an hour because we get such good interaction with our crowd. So it really takes about an hour and a half. But to just get information out there about kind of the good, the bad in estate planning, what's done right, what's done wrong, what people need to do to know that they're going to be successful. And at this point, we've done hundreds of those workshops all over Southwest Missouri. And one of our favorite things to do is go to small towns that have maybe never seen a lawyer set foot in their town ever. And we like to go there and just bring that to the people and let them know. Estate planning doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be intimidating. It doesn't have to be incredibly expensive. It's something that everybody can do, and it really is for everybody. Some people think, "Oh, I don't have enough. I don't have an estate." I hear that all the time. I don't have an estate. Well, sure you do. You have a car. You have a bank account, and somebody's going to have to deal with that when you can't deal with that anymore. And that's why estate planning is important. So those community events were our first attempt at outreach and really let people know, hey, estate planning is accessible and it's accessible for everybody.
And I noticed just even yesterday, I got an email from your office, and you're doing something new, a first annual. You may
Uh,
want to say something about that. So, but you're doing things in the community to help and to give back. So I know you're involved in a lot of different things.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like I said, part of my mission statement is to support my community. So that particular event you're talking about, we brainstormed that up last fall. We're calling it Super Bowl Saturday, and so we wanted to help out Newborns in Need, a local charity that supports young moms that maybe need some help. They take donations of diapers and cash and everything that a new mom with a new baby would need. And so on that Saturday, I think it's February 8th, the day before the Super Bowl, right here at our office at 203 Jamestown in Rogersville, Missouri, we're hosting Super Bowl Saturday, where we're hoping a lot of local people and even some local chefs. I'm kind of tied in with that crowd. Cooking is one of my hobbies. And we're hoping people will come make a donation to Newborns in Need, and then they can present their soup to the public, and the public can come and just taste a bunch of soups from a bunch of different people. I'm going to be there. I've got my soup ready to go. And it's a competition. So if you come to taste, come with some dollars in your hand. And if you like the soup, put a dollar in their bucket. And whoever raises the most money with their soup for Newborns in Need is going to get bragging rights from winning our first annual Super Bowl. But beyond that, there's a lot of issues that I think are important. And so I helped found and start. I was a founding president for the Logan Rogersville Educational Foundation that raises money for our local school here. More recently, I have served on the board of Lighthouse Christian Chargers, a homeschool athletics organization. I also helped found and start. I'm the founding president of a local cooperative school with a focus on Christian values called Lighthouse, not sorry, Legacy Prep School right here in Rogersville as well. So, and there's other projects. I'm involved with the bluegrass crowd because I'm a hillbilly. I like the bluegrass music. And I've served at my elderate at church, Fellowship Bible Church now for over 10 years.
Fantastic. Well, everyone that's listening knows that if you go back and listen to my old archive tapes, in the first 5 years, whenever I was on the radio, people would call in and say, "Where are you from?" And I was born in Dardanelle, Arkansas. I spent 27 years in Fort Smith, Arkansas. And so if you get me around any of my family, if it's Christmas time or whatever, you'll notice the next show or two after that, I'll have a big Southern drawl and I'll be talking with such a hick slang. It just gets bad, really bad. So I can identify with the hillbilly. I take that as a compliment, love it. But those of you who are listening right now, you can tell this is our kind of people on the show today. They're doing great things. You guys know I'm very involved in 4 different ministries that I support, and locally, food banks, a men's ministry in Mount Vernon, in that area, lots of different things. Honduras, one mission that I'm involved in, and then a church over near Kansas. So there's a lot of great things that we can be involved in with our time, with our money, with our finances, and giving back is very, very important. So if you're listening right now, you may be thinking, well, okay, Brad, I'm not in that boat. I don't have any money to give away. I'm just now getting started with my plan. Great. We want to show you how to take it from where you are to be the best steward that you can be, to develop that into much, much more so that you can do the kind of things that you want to do. I am the poster child for living paycheck to paycheck until I was 37 years old. If I didn't get paid on any given Friday because the secretary forgot and went on vacation, I would be in trouble before Monday. I lived that life the majority of my life. So now being on the other side of the spectrum, I'm very passionate about helping people no matter where they are. So you may have $10,000 saved. You may have $10 million saved. You may have $100 million saved. We have clients in all of those categories. That's okay. We're here to help. I can tell you this though, every one of you, no matter where you fall on that list, you need an estate plan and you need people who are experts in what they do, who know what they're talking about. The most painful thing to find out is to find out something after that you didn't know what you thought you knew. And then you find out what that cost you. So we don't want you to get focused on how much is this going to cost me to get this set up. I want to share from time to time, I do it on the show, what it's going to cost you to not have it set up. It's going to cost you so much more if you do it the wrong way. My good friend Jim Rohn, who I'll be talking about when I speak at a conference in Dallas here later this month, I'm going to quote him 3 different times, and he talks about the value of what's inside pages like this. Inside a book, people will get hung up and say, well, how much does that book cost? And Jim would say, it's not what the book costs you. It's what it costs you to not know the information inside this book, which is why I've written the books that I've written, Safe Money Matters, Bulletproof, the Safe and Secure Retirement Income Plan. Not knowing the information in that book is going to cost you tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars more than what it costs you $20 to buy a book. So we're grateful for people like Will, who takes his expertise, his knowledge, his passion, his gifts of kindness, and is willing to come on and share, to take his time and say, hey, here's what you need to do, and here's how we can help. So we're going to put Will's information on the screen, how you can get in contact with him, how you can reach out to us. Reach out to either one of us. If you want to talk to both of us, we can set that up for you. So our number is 866-780-SAFE. That's 866-780-7233. And after this break, we're going to come back and talk to you more about the nitty-gritty in estate planning and what it involves. 866-780-7233. Someone's standing by right now to take your call. Friends, if you're just now joining us, attorney Will Worsham's on the show with us today. And Will, back in December, I got the opportunity to go to one of your estate planning conferences and meetings, if you will, and there were about 20 people there. And you don't even know, I'm going to talk about here in a minute, you don't even know like the joy it brought me because of something that happened during the meeting. And I was just going to be a fly on the wall, come back in and sit and listen to kind of hear you present and see what you talk to your clients about, because we were getting to know each other. And it was awesome. I really enjoyed it. And here's what I want you to do. Tell us a little bit about, what you do at the estate planning meeting, but then also kind of incongruent with that, who needs a trust? What is a will? What is a trust? Why does someone even need one in today's world?
Sure. Well, those workshops, people can find out where we're doing them at our website, worshamworkshops.com. But at those workshops, and we do call them workshops because we want people to leave with some tools that they're going to need to do their estate planning. But like we discussed before, I think it's important to get to know the professionals you're working with. So I spend probably more time than people would like, letting people know kind of who I am and where I come from and why I got involved in estate planning. But once we get through that part, and I just want to have the crowd warmed up because I like to speak. I love being a public speaker, but I love speaking with people. And so I want my workshops to be interactive. So I love the part where we've kind of cut through all the, this is what a will does. This is what non-probate transfers do. This is what not planning does. This is what all kind of some of the shortcuts sometimes people try to avoid probate do. And we get focused and cards on the table. I'm a big fan of trusts. I like them. I know people have been afraid of them, but I think it's because misconceptions. They think they're only for rich people, or they think they're really expensive to set up and maintain. And none of that has to be true. But I love the part where I get to kind of sit down and go, okay, Sally, will you be my trustee? And we get the little bucket out and we show people what a trust is and say, hey, Brad, will you be the beneficiary? Of course, everybody's happy to be the beneficiary. And we walk through what it really means to set up a trust and like, okay, I'm the grantor now because I made the trust and Sally's the trustee. And so this is what Sally has to do. And then we walk through, well, what if we change the trust and how those things work to really illustrate how simple a trust is. And then we move on. Okay, after I've gone, I'm no longer here. What does Sally have to do? She's the trustee. And we show people how really, really simple it is to actually walk through the trust administration even after those grantors are gone. We cover what it means to have an asset protection trust. That's a really important piece for many people's estate plans, especially folks around here that have a lot of wealth tied up in land. That's really important too. And you said something happened to you. I'll share some personal experience. So, been focused primarily on estate planning for 10 years, which means I've done a lot of estate planning for my own family. And it was about this time last year, we started noticing my mother-in-law wasn't really functioning well. And so we ended up walking through that medical process with her, and her decline and the dementia set in and really unable to function. She had to be in long-term care. So we've dealt with the long-term care issues, and then we lost her back in October. And of course, my brother-in-law was her successor trustee in her trust. And so he's the one that had to take up that mantle and use all of that estate planning tools that I I created, for better or for worse. And I really got to see firsthand uh, exactly what I'm telling people is exactly how it works. It really works the way I say it do, and I can say it from personal experience because we've now walked through that with my own family again.
Wow, that's so good, Will. Thank you for sharing that. That's why I'm going to share the opposite side. So this is what can happen. My father was 52 years in the financial services industry. He had almost every financial designation under the sun: COU, CHFC, worked for Merrill Lynch, Blue Cross Blue Shield, was a genius. Head of the ROTC in college, never made a B in junior high, high school, or college, valedictorian in high school, valedictorian in college, a genius. Could whiz right through any test he ever passed. However, with all that being said, and with having all this financial knowledge and being a high income earner and doing really well, he failed to set up his own estate plan properly. And so my father died 2 years ago, as our listeners know, and he was part of our practice. And so my son inherited all of his book of business and all of his clients, his 401ks, his managed money, all that sort of thing. But the really difficult part was he died unexpectedly. Decline had started, but we didn't know what it was. He'd been to Mayo Clinic twice. They tried to diagnose it as Parkinson's. It wasn't dementia, but everything was falling apart and we knew it. And then one night, just very peacefully, things happened very quickly. After watching a St. Louis Cardinal baseball game, he walked around the corner to get a drink, went down to his knee, stopped breathing, and it was all over. And when something like that happens, then you find out about whether or not your plan was set up correctly, and his plan wasn't. Even though I worked with him in the business, I didn't have the passwords to his computers or to his accounts. Mom, who had always trusted for 52 years that Dad's going to take care of all that. That's true. Dad did take care of all of it, but there's a problem. And I say this to every person I sit across from. I don't pick on women. My parents raised me right. I pick on men, and this is what I know. We're older and we die first. So guess what? If the person who's older who dies first is the person who takes care of all the finances and knows where everything is, you've left a mess to your spouse, to your widow. And that's exactly what my father left. I love my father, but it took months and months and months to be able to get into things. They wouldn't talk to Mom at certain banks because he was the only name on the account. And so she couldn't get in and access accounts. She didn't know where the next paycheck was going to come from because his accounts were password protected and we didn't know what they were. We didn't know how to find them. I could go on and on and on, but because of keeping time short, I will just say this. You want to have the right plan in place. And ironically, when I was at your estate planning session, which I learned more about wills and trusts in that session than anything I've ever done. I may talk more about that in the next session. You asked for 2 volunteers, and the volunteers was a guy on the front row, and his name was Joe, which was my father's name, and then me. And so you had us in 2 different positions where one was the owner and the grantor and one was the beneficiary, and then you flipped it. And very ironically, I thought about all the times my father was in his role and I was down here not really knowing what was going on. And you flipped it in the estate. And I said, you may remember, I said, "Oh, now the shoe's on the other foot, Joe. How does that feel?" And everyone started cracking up laughing, and they didn't know. I was representing what had happened a lot in my family. So it is so critically important that you guys set up the right estate plan, the right financial plan, so that you have a safe and secure retirement income plan, but then also that you know it's going to pass on in the most tax efficient way to your families and to your heirs. So we're going to talk more about that on the show today. Real quick, if you need our help, look on the screen for Will's information, how to contact him. You can call us anytime at 866-780-7233. So Will, here's what I want to do. We got 2 more segments left. I want to share this with the clients. When we meet with our clients and we do develop a plan for them, we give them an estate planning book. We also give them the card to an attorney that we trust extremely well and say, hey, if you want to take this a step further, this is really what you need to do in tandem with your plan. But in the estate planning book that we give our clients, it starts at the very beginning by sharing the stories of a lot of really famous people. So I wrote some of them down here. Anna Nicole Smith, Heath Ledger, James Brown, Sammy Davis Jr., Elvis Presley. There are several more, but people who did not have an estate plan in place. They didn't have a will, a lot of them. They didn't have a trust. And so I know that it took a lot of their families hundreds of thousands, in some cases millions of dollars, and even more than a year of time just to settle their estate. Why is it that it's so important to have a trust in place in some circumstances? And talk about what can happen to the family if there's no plan in place.
Yeah, well, without a trust and without other planning, either no plan at all or even a will-based plan, the first problem that most people are going to run into is they're going to be thrown into the probate court system. And the probate court system, we have to be thankful for what the things that the government does for us because at least they did something. But like most government programs, this is not the one you want to be involved in. Probate
Yes.
court is expensive, it's time consuming, and it's public. And those are just three things that typically we don't want to have to deal with when we're dealing in grief with someone that we've lost. It's also an open forum if we've not left a plan where anybody who thinks they know what our plan ought to be, usually to their own benefit, gets to go and air their grievances. And that causes sometimes lifelong family rifts that we just don't want to happen. I've got three boys. I show their picture in my workshop because I'm proud of them. I love them very much, and I'm proud to say that at this point they all still like each other. On their worst day, they at least tolerate each other, right? And I just would be in dread if I thought that I left them a mess that was going to cause them to never speak again. And we know that happens. I mean, I've had the families in my office and they're sitting on opposite sides of the conference room table because they're fighting over mom or dad's estate. And it's heartbreaking to have to watch that and the animosity. So the first reason is let's make sure we leave our family in a good position to remain intact. I think that's primary. And, I'm confident that when I see those situations, that mom and dad never imagined that their kids would come to blows even or fight over their stuff. And because if they did, they'd have made a plan. They'd have made a better plan. And so we want to see that. And I don't have to go deeply into why probate's a horrible idea. It needs to be avoided. But the point I do like to make, because I have a lot of people that approach me and say, well, I have a will. So that means nothing goes to probate, right? Because I've left a will. So it doesn't need to go to probate. And I'm like, that's absolutely wrong. It's 100% wrong. Wills are instructions for a probate judge. And I think Hollywood has done us a great disservice because we all see those movies where somebody's rich uncle dies. And the next thing that happens is they go to the lawyer's office and have a reading of the will. And that's all that ever happens. And so I think it's given a lot of people the impression that a will avoids probate, and it simply doesn't. And I don't think I could state it any clearer than that. If you have a will, it's going to be in probate. So the best way to avoid probate is to have a trust. And in my workshop, I go into great detail about why a trust avoids probate. The simple answer is we only need probate to decide who owns something if the owner has died. When we have a trust, we don't have that problem because we know who owns it. We've named the trustees, we've named the successor trustees, and we've left them instructions on how to do that. And I want to add one name to your list, which is Casey Kasem. I don't know if you remember what happened in Casey Kasem's, but it was interesting because in Casey Kasem's situation, what he had left out of his plan, and I don't know the details of his plan beyond the fact, but he had left out there was no what's called right of sepulcher. And that's where you specify who has control over your remains. And so his daughter and his wife had an extended legal battle over who was going to control his body, how it was disposed of, and where it was going to be interred. And so sometimes even those little details we don't think about can cause those big family rifts and fights. And so that's why we're passionate about making sure that we've kind of tried to cover all the little details and make sure that people have the instructions they need, the who, what, when, where, and why of what our plan is
Mm.
going to be.
That's so good. It's Wednesday morning We've had 2 death calls this week at the office. When you have a lot of clients, you have thousands of clients, you're going to get a lot of calls about claims, and it's going to be always the unknown. A niece, a nephew, a daughter, someone's going to call and say, hey, just need to let you know, but dad passed a couple of days ago, or whatever the situation is. And this is our saying. We've learned this over 16 years. It is never proven not to be true. When someone dies, the gloves come off. That's the saying. Well, what do we mean? Will's been talking about it. When someone dies, that's when the gloves come off. People start boxing bare-fisted. And Will has a background in karate, Taekwondo, right? So
I
he
do.
can talk to you about that. He knows about fighting and protecting yourself. And gloves are there for a reason. But when someone dies and someone thinks there's money there, there's been all kinds of movies about that, about what happens with the states and the reading of the will, and people just get they're funny a lot of times. They make comedies about them, but it's not funny in real life when the gloves come off. And so we want to make sure that you have things in place. And just having a will in place, it's not what you need. There needs to be more. We spend a lot of time talking about the importance of designated beneficiary forms because it trumps the will, can actually trump the trust. You got to make sure you have designated beneficiary forms on every financial document you've got, on your bank accounts, on any annuity, stock, bond, mutual fund, life insurance, whatever it is. Make sure your beneficiary forms are up to date and make sure those things are congruent with your trust. So we're going to run out of time. I want to have one more quick segment. But if you're just now tuning in, if you're just now listening, we're going to be spending our last session here with Will, lawyer without a suit, and get this to. We're going to put a picture of the book up on the screen where we'll actually focus better. Sorry about that. But if you're listening today, you can call us anytime, 866-780-SAFE. That's 866-780-7233. Ask for a free financial consultation. For a copy of my book, I'll be more than happy to give you one free of charge. You can ask how to get in touch with Will. We're going to have that information on the screen, but we'll provide that to you also. 866-780-7233. Friends, thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to bring the show to a wrap, and I will tell you, we could spend 10 shows talking about all the stuff that goes with estate planning, wills, trust, how to establish things, why they're important, avoiding probate. We're going to have Will on the show a lot more in the future. So just know maybe every 6 weeks or so, we're going to have him come back on and share some tidbits with you, information that you need to know. And we're always going to provide how you can attend his workshops and where to find out more information about him. But I want to do this. I don't want to go deep into the weeds, but I want to say this, Will. You know, I have a trust, and I trusted the attorney who set it up, still trust the attorney. But I do know this. I know very little about it, even though a lot of time was spent putting it all together and there's all these terms and all these definitions. But I'll tell you what, when I have to fill out stuff for my own financial stuff and they want copies of the trust, that's when I want to pull my hair out because they're going to ask all these questions. Who is the grantor? Who's the settlor? Who is the beneficiary? Who is the, all these terms keep coming out, and the trustee, the successor trustee. And it is confusing, and I do this stuff every day. So, I wrote out a list here. There are revocable trusts. There are irrevocable trusts. There are MAP trusts, Medicaid Asset Protected Trust, all kinds of trusts. There are wills, powers of attorney, powers of financial attorney, medical attorney. How in the world does someone even begin to make sense of all the stuff that's out there, and how do they know what it is that they need? Can you
Yeah,
help us
it's
with
really
that?
tricky. And one of the points of failure we saw in estate planning is people would have trusts and not know how they were supposed to work, not know how to use them. In fact, we discovered that because people kept coming to my workshops that already had trusts in place, and I'd always ask them, "Why are you here?" And they would say, "We don't understand it." 100% of the time, we don't understand it. And so I committed right up front that I never wanted one of my clients sitting in some other lawyer's workshop because they didn't understand what we did for them. So we built what we think is a unique process. We call it a roadmap, where we walk clients through in a series of multiple meetings before, during, and after we've drafted their plan to make sure they do understand it. And I always make the point to say, I want to make sure that when I say understand your trust, I mean understand it the way I understand my truck, which is I understand how to put gas in it, I understand how to drive it, and I understand how to take it to the guy that can change the oil, or if something doesn't seem right, can fix it. And that's what I mean about a trust. You don't need to know how to build it, tear it down, repair it yourself, but you do need to know how to put gas in it. You do know you need how to drive it. You need to know when and where to take it when it needs some repair, some update, or some fixing. And we run into the all the time. honestly banks and some other financial institutions and other people that over ask for documentation. They ask for documents that they really don't need and really aren't entitled to. And one of those is we find a lot of times banks or other institutions will say, well, we need a copy of your trust. They do not. A lot of the information in that trust is private information. It's none of their business who you and how and you're giving stuff to, but they do have a right and they do need certain information. And Missouri has limited their access to that information, their ability to gain that. And so we produce what's called a certificate of trust. It's a notarized document by the grantor and the trustee that provides those institutions in about a 1 to 2 page document all of the information that they're legally entitled to get. And it recites the statutes in the one that we drafted so that they can refer to it and say, oh, here's the statute that this person is relying on. And it provides those institutions some liability protection as well. So they have every right to rely on those documents. So if you want to give people a copy of your trust, you're free to do that. It's your trust, but never believe that you have to give them documents that complete trust if you don't want to. That's your private document. I mean, like you said,
Boy,
we're
that's
short on
good.
time and deep in the weeds. We don't want to get deep in the weeds, but there's two primary general types of trusts. There's revocable trusts and there's irrevocable trusts. And all trusts are going to fall into one of those two categories. And while wills, people think are ancient documents, they've been around for hundreds of years, and that's what we've always relied on. And well, these trusts are these newfangled things. Well, trusts are not newfangled things. We've had trusts around as long as we've had wills. It's just trusts have become a more modern way of doing estate planning. So they're not brand new documents. They've been around just as long as wills are. We just have discovered that they're a really wonderful tool for estate planning. A revocable trust is something that the grantor remains in complete control of, can change anything they want, anytime they want. And it's the primary vehicle we're going to use for estate planning because we don't want you to lose control of what you don't want to lose control. You still have to live your life, but we still need to put those protections in place from probate, still be able to leave the instructions of how we want our estate handled when it comes time to distribute it to beneficiaries. Irrevocable trusts are a different animal, and they can be used for many different purposes. The primary purpose we're going to use an irrevocable trust is to protect an asset from a potential creditor. For many people, the primary creditor they're concerned about is Medicaid because we're just in a position that healthcare costs are out of control, and our ability to outlive our competency has become great with advancements in medical technology. So many of us are going to have a period of time, usually on average up to 8 years, that we're maybe going to have to spend in a long-term care facility because our body has outlived our brain or, or one or the other. We can't do that. And that usually results in an average of about $1 million problem. And either we don't have the money to pay for that or we don't want to lose that out of our estate. That's money we worked hard for. We want it to go to our kids. And nobody can take from you something that you don't own. And that's the benefit of an irrevocable trust. What you put in it, if it's properly drafted, you don't own it anymore. So it's not subject to the claims of any creditor, including Medicaid, once again, when set up and funded properly. And one misconception that I run up on all the time is, well, don't irrevocable trust face a punitive tax system? And many do, but there are provisions within the IRS tax code that define what a grantor trust is. And I know we're getting deep in the weeds, so I'm going to cut it short. But essentially, if you draft your trust correctly, it attains grantor trust status, and it does not suffer a tax penalty. All the taxes are paid through the grantor at the grantor's tax rate, so there's no tax penalty to properly setting up an asset protection trust as well.
Well, that's such great information. And I know I will say this when I'm talking about all the IRA stuff, 401k, IRA, TSP, 403b, 457 plan. People are like, whoa, 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 pump the brakes, slow down this stuff. I know you guys talk about this all day long, every day, but we don't. And so we do understand this is a lot of information, but you have learned on the show today, no matter where you're listening from across the United States, this guy, our guest today, Will Worsham, knows his stuff inside and out. He's passionate about it. He's passionate about helping people. So he will be back on the show more because it is part of a safe and secure retirement income plan. You got to make sure that all this time you spent, years and years and years of your life, building up your assets to get to a point where you can enjoy, take a break, and do the things in life that you want to do. You got to make sure that it's going to last the way you want it to last and that it's going to pass on to your intended beneficiaries with the least pain possible and the least amount of tax. So, Will, thank you so much. Real quick, tell everyone how they can find you, how they can get a hold of you.
Sure, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on the show. So our general law firm website is willworshamlaw.com. Our phone number is 417-863-WILL. 417-863-9455. But to find where I'm going to be speaking, and reserve your seat, that's a different website. We set it up just for that. It's at worshamworkshops.com. And we'd love to see everybody there.
Perfect. Everyone, thank you so much for listening. We can't wait to have Will back on again. As we always say, have a fantastic week and God bless.